In this special episode of the ASC Podcast with John Goehle, recorded at the Arizona Ambulatory Surgery Center Association's annual conference at the Sheraton Grand at Wild Horse Pass in Phoenix, Arizona, and in our studios in Spencerport, New York, we share interviews with two of the conference's featured speakers, Terry Bohlke and Daren Smith, and discuss the benefits of membership in the Arizona ASC Association.
Welcome to the ASC Podcast with John Goehle, the longest-running podcast specifically focused on the freestanding ambulatory surgery industry. We would like to thank our sponsors, Surgical Information Systems, providing cutting-edge information solutions for surgery providers, RFX Solutions, your all-in-one healthcare regulatory compliance software, MedServe, which is the only digital narcotic cabinet specifically designed and priced for surgery centers, helping standardize processes, compliance, eliminate paper logs and prevent drug diversion, and Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies, the nation's leading regulatory and accreditation compliance resource for ambulatory surgery centers. For more information about our sponsors, please visit our website at ascpodcast.com.
Welcome to episode 280 of the ASC Podcast with John Goehle. This is a special episode recorded both at the Arizona Ambulatory Surgery Center Association's annual conference at the Sheraton Grand at Wild Horse Pass in Phoenix, Arizona, and here in our studios in Spencerport, New York. I'm Sue Cronka, your co-host and operations manager at Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies. As always, the regulatory environment for ambulatory surgery centers continues to shift and evolve. The information we share in this episode is current as of the time of recording, but we encourage all ASCs to stay alert and monitor for any new or updated guidance from the relevant regulatory agencies. Joining me today is John Goehle, owner of Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies, ASC Central, and the ASC Podcast with John Goehle. With more than 3 decades of hands-on experience, John is a sought-after speaker and trusted expert on regulation, accreditation, and financial management. John, you just got back from Arizona, so welcome home.
Thanks, Sue. It's good to be back, and I'll tell you, just getting to this conference was a bit of an adventure. The day before the conference, when I was supposed to be going down to the conference, so I'd have a night before I started speaking in the afternoon of the second day, I got to the airport here in Rochester and waited, and the plane kept getting delayed, and then ultimately it would have gone off, but it would have arrived at Detroit after the flight to Phoenix was going to go off. So I did go out the next morning. I contacted the people at the association and said, there's a risk that I won't get there because I only had 3 hours to spare. But everything worked well. It was a great flight. And though I will tell you, I was a bit exhausted when I did that first presentation. So I did 2 presentations there. One was Finance 201, which was a 3-hour workshop. That's the one I was the most exhausted for because it was only 2 hours after I landed. But it was a lot of fun. You know, Sue, one of the things that I found fascinating about this group is there was a lot of interaction. It was a relatively small group in the Finance 201. There were a lot more nurses really at this conference than there were administrators. But what was nice is I got really to know every one of them in the audience. And here's the funny thing, too, is that the same people showed up for both of my sessions.
Oh, really?
So just like in church, they all parked themselves in the exact same seats for both days. But I really, really enjoyed this conference. And I know I've told you about this, but there's one thing that is very special about the Arizona Association meeting. Do you remember what that was?
Could it have been the beer burrow?
It was the beer.
I think I've heard about that a few times now.
Yeah, the beer burrow, B-U-R-R-O.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a little confusing at first. And
I thought it was like a street of bars or something at first, like the borough of beer. I don't know.
Well, this character, this donkey, apparently is a very well known. He's a bit of a celebrity in Phoenix, and he shows up at like weddings or other outdoor events, and he visited with us. And indeed, he dishes out Coronas.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, she dishes out Coronas.
Yeah. She basically wears like a cooler or something, right? Or an ice thing and
walks around.
And somebody calls her over if they need a beer.
Well, she just keeps wandering and then offering it up to people. It was, I got a great picture, and I probably should try to post it to our website here, but it was a lot of fun. And I don't really drink beer, but it was, I almost did after seeing the beer burro. And she was a sweetheart, though, and very well trained. Actually, as we're sitting here with our dogs acting up right now, she was better behaved than the donkey was there.
But I'm assuming that has to only be a place where it's like open bar, because she doesn't take money or change or
she was
anything
not,
like that. You can't
there was
tip
no.
her.
So by the way, if you have never been to an Arizona conference, apparently the beer burro shows up every year. So maybe this is going to be the big draw for people to get there. But as I said, I just barely made it to the conference. And what was interesting, my first session, which was kind of a workshop, was Finance 201. I am usually the guy that does Finance 101.
Yeah.
And actually, one of our speakers today, Terry Bohlke, and I are very good friends, and he's the one that usually does 201. But they asked me to do Finance 201 for this conference, and I had a lot of fun. As always, even when you give me 3 hours to talk about something, I run out of time very quickly.
Yeah.
So. And I do want to point out that the second session on strategic planning was on the second day. I was much better rested for that one, and I always run out of time when I'm talking about that. But both of the sessions were very well received. As I mentioned, great questions, engaged rooms, and it was wonderful to see so many of our listeners out there in person also. And I do want to point out one thing before we get into the interviews is we were not able to actually interview anybody from the association. So after the interviews, you and I will talk a little bit about what the benefits are of joining the state association.
And it's so good to hear, John, that the audience was so helpful, especially after a start that you had like that, because it really, I know having an engaged audience really just gives you back that energy that you probably didn't have a lot of at that point. And so while you were there, though, you also sat down with a couple of the conference speakers and got some good interviews.
Yeah, and actually they were both excellent presenters. I was able to listen to Terry. Unfortunately, I left before Daren's speech. But I did catch up with them to talk about what their sessions were going to be about. Both Terry and Daren and I go way back. And for long-term listeners of the podcast, you'll know that Daren Smith from SIS has the record for the most number of interviews he's had here. So people must really like him since we keep bringing them back. So we're going to share both of those conversations with you in just a moment. A little later, we're also going to talk about the Arizona Association itself. And as I mentioned, why membership makes so much sense for centers out there. So let's get right to it. So first up was my interview with Terry Bohlke, a long-term friend, a retired Navy commander, and one of the most thoughtful voices in leadership in our industry. His session was called Leadership in the Trenches, and we dug into what really makes a great ASC leader and whether leaders are born or made. Here's our conversation. So I'm here at the Arizona Association of Ambulatory Surgery Centers annual conference. We're in very, very hot Phoenix, Arizona right now, and I'm here with a very dear friend of mine from way back, Terry Bohlke. Terry, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you, John. It's a pleasure and an honor to be on. I really love your podcast. I love what you're doing and what the information you're providing to the ASC industry.
I appreciate it. You know, we often talk. We never talk together. I think we maybe have done one together, but I can remember we've frequently done like I do, Finance 101 and you do 201. So I mean we're usually opposite each other or follow each other on some of the speeches that we do. So it's been a fun ride with each other here. And I just I was telling you before the podcast here that I did your Finance 201 course. I don't know why I wasn't allowed to do my 101 again because I'm a little more comfortable there, but it was funny and I stole some of your slides I think I might have mentioned. So thank you very much for that. But.
Yeah, I think you're very humble. I think you can run circles around me.
Oh, I don't know about that.
You're an account. I'm a recovering CPA myself. So I haven't done that in a very long time. But yeah, well, we do teach the classes and it's a lot of fun. We have a good time together.
Absolutely. And to that end, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your history in the industry?
Sure. Well, in the industry, I was an ASC administrator way back when, and before that, I was chief financial officer for a couple of hospitals, and hating life in the hospital world. and thinking there was more to life. And the doctor said, why don't you come run our surgery center?
Yeah.
And I didn't say it, but I thought, what's a surgery center? But I knew the doctors, and they were cool. As a big surgery center in California, and they made me the administrator. They had faith in me. They let me learn. The staff had faith in me, and they taught me. And I just remember my first day there, just having the chills, and just thinking, this is it. This is home.
Right.
And I recall in the hospital. Needing to try to fix something in the emergency room and having to go through committees, and 3 months later there was still nothing changed. And then at the surgery center, I had a doctor storm into my office and say, the doors to PACU don't open. You hit the button and it's like a 3-second delay before they open. That's not okay. And I went to the facilities guy. I said, when he comes around this next time, it'll be fixed. And he fixed it, and that way I found my home.
And your story is my story, and it's probably half our audience out there, isn't it? That this is how we all get into it. Well, that's the way we all used to get into it. I think things are changing now. We're finding a lot of people coming into the industry like literally fresh out of college, and I think those changes are having a dramatic impact on our industry. Which kind of gets to your presentation here. I've been, first of all, this conference has already been fantastic. I've been crying like during some of the presentations. Were you at the first presentation today with the keynote speaker?
Yes,
It was incredible. I'm going to try to get him on. I just finished a presentation.
He was crying.
He was crying.
He had all of us crying.
And I did one on strategic planning where he talked about the big picture, and people came up to me afterwards. I almost missed lunch, like you almost missed lunch, because I had spent so much time talking to people. Are really engaged here.
Yes.
For you out there who are listening that have never come to an Arizona Association meeting, you are missing an incredible opportunity. And to that end,
I've been here many times, and it's grown so much. It's very sophisticated. It's very organized, multiple tracks. It's blowing up.
Yeah, and you've got an engaged audience. I've enjoyed every moment that I had speaking with them, and I know yours is later this afternoon. But I think your topic, which is on leadership, is one of the most important things we're dealing with now. It's like half my life right now, really, is trying to find the leaders out there and put them in the right spot in the surgery centers. And I know you work with a lot of leaders too. But you come from a very different aspect, don't you? Very different starting point. And I think that's something our audience needs to hear. So tell me a little bit about what you're going to talk about here and how it relates to surgery centers.
Sure. Well, my background is that I joined the Army when I was 17, and similar to our speaker. Remember? And my parents had to sign for me just like his did. And I joined as a medic, and so I was in the Army. I was in the Army for 8 years. And then when I got my degree in accounting, I transferred over to the Navy and had 25 years total service. And my last command, I retired as a commander, so I'm retired now, not in the service anymore. But when I retired, my last command was executive officer of the Center for Naval Leadership. And what we did is we trained hundreds of sailors and junior officers how to be leaders and how to be better leaders. And the one thing I learned more than anything is leadership can be taught. And good leaders can become great leaders. And my whole desire for teaching leadership is to get leaders excited again about learning to be leaders. Most of us who are leaders don't have any formal leader training whatsoever.
There really isn't a college course or a doctorate in it, isn't there?
No, and could you imagine being a nurse at a new center, having no orientation, with no training, and be like, okay, go in the OR and circulate that case, right? That's kind of what we do with leaders. We don't give them a training. It's all on-the-job training, which is good. Leadership experience is really good, but you need both.
I have an interesting question because I've grappled with this much of my life. Do you think everyone can become a leader? I've often wondered, how much of it is training and how much it is something that's in you that, isn't easily defined.
Let me give you this example. My mom was very shy, and would never, ever consider herself a leader. But she led our family. So, anybody can become a leader. And most of us become leaders whether we want to or not. Some of us kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
A lot of my administrators like, we need you to step up and be the leader.
Yeah.
No, not me. Yes, you've got it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think anybody can become a leader. There's an old saying, are leaders born or made?
Yeah.
And honestly, Vince Lombardi said, leaders are not born, they are made, and they're made like everything else through hard work.
Yeah.
And that is so true. Anybody can learn to be a leader, and any good leader can learn to be a great leader.
And that really directly relates to what we're talking about here in the surgery center industry. We have a real tough time right now. Our leaders, people like myself, are getting up there in years. The leaders that taught me to be who I am today are, unfortunately, many of them are either retired or really no longer with us.
We were the young punks.
I know.
Not that long ago. All of a sudden, we're the old guard.
I know.
How did that happen?
I know. Because we don't look that old. I'm just telling you. And thankfully, we don't have, video here, but certainly with me, with this gray hair. But you look a lot younger than I do.
You have hair.
That's true. But, I mean, never was there a time in the industry that good leadership has been more important. Mm-hmm. So what came from the military that directly impacts you today in this industry?
Well, a couple things. One thing is that I get questioned, what do military leadership principles have to do with leading an ASC? And two things. First of all, leadership is leadership regardless of the setting. And so the things we learn from military leadership are just as valid in the ASC setting. The other thing is that there's a comparison in that risks are just as real in the ASC as they are in the military. Life hangs in the balance in the operating room just as much as it does on the battlefield.
And we don't always remember that, don't we? Mm-hmm. We forget because things tend to go pretty smoothly here. Doesn't always happen in maybe the hospital environment, but things can go south very quickly.
They can. And it doesn't happen as often because we have great leaders.
Right. So what's the secret sauce? What do we need now to build the leaders for this next generation? What do we have to change, and what can we bring to the industry?
Well, my presentation, what I do is I go through all the not all, I don't think it can come to all, but I go through the main characteristics of what a great leader is. And I use people who we all know from the military, heroes from the military, and I talk about some quote that they've said that really impacts that key characteristic. And interestingly enough, a lot of those historical figures have had major failures, and they've made huge, life-costing mistakes, and they've had limitations. And so I go into a lot of their backstories, and I talk about, that they never let those limitations stop them. That's the thing, because we all have them. And we all make mistakes, but we learn more from our mistakes and our setbacks than we ever do our successes.
Right.
We rarely remember our successes. It's just human nature, especially those of us in healthcare, right? We're always looking for what went wrong and how do we make sure it doesn't happen again. That's just ingrained in us. So each one of those historical figures has had those failures and have succeeded. And then I dive deeper into each characteristic on what does it mean? What does it mean to have integrity? Right? It's one of General Eisenhower, who was the supreme leader of Allied forces in Europe, said integrity is the supreme quality of leadership. So we should probably listen to him, right? But what is integrity? And there's a lot of parts to it, but basically it's trust. And so I talk a lot about integrity and how you, as a leader, how do you build integrity with your people, and not just the people who report to you, but your boss, your board, the other places you work with. And I talk about communication. Abraham Lincoln said, when I reason with someone, I spend 1/3 of my time thinking about what I'm going to say and 2/3 of the time understanding what they are saying.
Yeah.
And boy, that is so impactful. And I always say, God gave us one mouth and two ears.
Yeah.
And exactly what Lincoln said, right?
You know,
1/3 of the time you talk,
Yeah.
2/3 of the time you need to listen. And that's what a great leader does.
I'm laughing because you are actually in the same room that I was in doing the administrative track. And I just did one on strategic planning. And I showed the values that, talked about the values that every surgery center should be giving, should be exhibiting and what they put into their plan. Number one was integrity.
Integrity.
And I was talking about the 7 habits of highly successful people, and one of those is seek first to understand and then to be understood. And I always use that same thing you just used. You got one mouth and two ears.
One mouth and two ears.
And it's interesting how, first of all, the audience here is going to see some connection between it. I love it. You and I never talked beforehand about it. But you see how this beautiful fabric we have is being molded here.
It is so
being
true.
laid out.
It's so true.
Yeah.
And then, and you mentioned 7 habits of highly effective people. Another common leadership question is, are you a leader or are you a manager?
Yeah.
And what's the difference? And a common thing I hear is, well, the leader builds the train system and the manager keeps the train running on time, right? Well, if you're an ASC administrator, you can't be bad at either.
Right.
You've got to design the processes, and you need to make sure that surgery schedule is running on time.
Right.
So it's not a either or. You have to do both. You cannot be a great leader without also being a strong manager.
And that's a good path forward, too. I mean, I think we find a lot of people, look at the average director now in a surgery center. Usually they've come up through the ranks. It's rare that they're coming out of college with some degree that puts them in that place. I mean, it does happen. But I just find that an interesting question.
Yeah.
As you talk about how you develop great leaders, what's the raw material that we're looking for out there?
Great question. And let me start with another quote from Harry Truman. And he says, "It's amazing what you can accomplish if you do not care who gets the credit."
Yeah.
But the way it really resonates here is Harry Truman's background. A lot of people don't realize he came from a very poor family, and he desperately was super smart guy in high school. Totally go to college, but they weren't, at that time they weren't giving out scholarships, so you had to pay. And so he saved up enough money to go for college, just a business college, not a 4-year college, but he went for 1 semester.
Yeah.
And then he had to drop out because his family needed him to come back and work the farm and make money so they could survive. So he never went back to college. And interestingly enough, too, he wanted to join the military, but he wanted to go to West Point, but he failed the eye test. So he failed that. But he ended up going back to the National Guard by memorizing the eye test and passing the eye charts, and he got into the National Guard, but still never ever went to college. He's the only president in that century, the only president since the 1800s who did not have a college degree. And so my message is to people, when you look at ASC leaders, they come from all walks of life. Like I said, I was a hospital CFO, right? And I tell you, some of my best administrators were business office directors. They make great leaders. And of course, most ASC leaders are RNs who've come up through either the OR or pre-op PACU, and they're fantastic because they bring that clinical experience. And so they're all walks of life. There's no set mold. And the thing is, the administrator job is all-encompassing. To bring it back to the Navy, you're the captain of the ship. And a captain of the ship has to be, jack of all trades, master of a lot of them. But you're still not master of all. And so when and I tell this to people who are interested in the CASC exam. is because they're afraid to take it because, well, I'm not clinical, I'm going to fail that part, and the clinical people see it, I'm going to fail the finance part.
Right.
Well, everybody's going to struggle on one part and have to study harder and that's the same thing about the administrator job. Some people come in with really strong finance backgrounds, and like me, I didn't know diddly squat about the running of an OR. But
trying to learn the pharmacy was the toughest part for me when I passed the exam too. Exactly.
But I had a director of nursing who, her name was Chona, and she took me by the arm, and she just, very patient with me, and she taught me everything I needed to know. And same thing with the clinical people. We get clinical people all the time who are new into the administrator job, and within a few months, they are giving the financial report for the monthly operating review for their center.
So as we end here, what are, first of all, passion is one thing that I notice. Listening to you, people listen to me, it's all about passion, isn't it? Especially when you're trying to develop this next, the next generation of leaders out there. How important do you think passion is in this job?
Well, for me, leadership, if you don't really get anything else out of all the books you read on leadership and all that, the one thing you need to get is leadership is all about people. People and their relationships with other people. And we're told to love thy neighbor. And that just when you're a leader, you really need to embrace that, because your staff needs you, and you need to understand you're working with people. And people can get upside down with each other. And as a leader, you need to be the one that steps in and takes care of them. And by doing that with that passion and that just love for people and love for your team, that's what makes you the kind of person people want to follow.
I love it. And I think that's a good way to end it. Thank you so much, Terry. We're going to have you back.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
And next I sat down with Daren Smith. He's the Vice President of ASC Solutions at Surgical Information Systems and a nurse who spent 20 years running surgery centers. Daren's session was on quality studies and where so many centers go wrong with them. We talked about how to get them right and what AAHC's recent changes mean for your program. Here's that conversation. I'm here at the Arizona State Association's annual meeting. We're in Phoenix, Arizona, and it is very hot here, isn't it, Daren?
Yes, it is. It's pretty oppressive out there.
Last week I was up in the Cascade Mountains, where it was a very different temperature. But anyway, I am here with Daren Smith, dear friend. He still has the award for the most interviews on our podcast over the years. So welcome back, Daren, to this podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
First of all, introduce yourself. I don't think there's anybody that doesn't know who you are, but there might be a couple people out there. Go ahead and tell me what you do, and then let's talk about what you're going to talk about here tomorrow.
Sure. So I'm Daren Smith. I'm the VP of ASC Solutions for Surgical Information Systems, which basically means I'm the one that's coming in with all of the ASC experience. I'm a nurse by trade, spent 20 years running surgery centers. Now I work for a software company and guide our product to make sure it works for surgery centers, doing demos and peer-to-peer and all those kind of things.
I think we should emphasize right now, you are not a nerd.
No.
You're not one of those nerdy people that you work with every time. And that's really the whole point of what you do.
Yeah, exactly. You have to bridge that gap between, the nerds create the product and Daren shows it off.
Yeah, right. And by the way, speaking as a nerd myself, I'm just going to say I'm not being critical of nerds out there. It's just that we need people like you in order to get us back on track.
So. Nerd translators.
That's right, exactly. So talk a little bit about first of all, we're on the first day. We're recording on the first day here, and you're speaking tomorrow, so you've still got the night to figure out what you're going to talk about.
Right.
Talk about why don't we talk about the title and then what you intend to talk about?
So I'm talking about quality studies and what surgery centers can do to get it right. What everyone may be doing wrong or what they may have gone down the wrong path with, and how to right the ship, if you will.
Right.
And one of the things that I do for my job is every year AAHC puts out their pathway, and explains what they cited people on the year before. So one of my jobs is to read that and try to figure out, are there ways that we can adjust our software so that people can be more compliant?
Right.
What that also gives me is tons of content that I can use for presentations and situations like these. So I developed a presentation to kind of address what we see a lot of times with quality studies. And we're going to look at, where some of these things have gone wrong, where some of these things have gone right, and just talk about, all of us have to do these.
Yeah.
We have to do these studies. We have to be able to present that what we're doing is improving the healthcare and the situations that we have at the surgery center. So we talk a little bit about the never-ending study, the studies that never end.
Those darn hand hygiene studies that I see another one.
Are we still doing that?
Yeah, I hope not, but I do see them every once in a while as a surveyor.
Yeah, and the hair removal one is still one of my favorites. Yeah. Do you even have straight razors here? No, haven't had them since 1996. Okay, then why are we still looking at this? Yeah. Why are we still looking at that as a study? So all those things, and trying to help them define what the difference is between monitoring and a study.
Right.
You use monitoring to develop studies. It's the things you do in that monitoring phase that will help you create the studies that you need to be able to present and improve processes at the surgery center.
Yeah, that's actually a very important point to make that I've run into periodically, especially with newer surgery centers that might not have been through the whole process, is that I've literally seen surgery centers that I've surveyed who thought the whole quality improvement program was the QI study. So it's important to emphasize that.
Right. To see, it's the things that you do that can help you define what those studies are. You can do patient satisfaction surveys. You can do employee satisfaction surveys. You can do all this infection control monitoring, and all that monitoring that you do. That's not a study.
Right.
A study is these are trending in the wrong direction, and we're going to try to right that. And here's the plan that we have to do so.
Can I make an important point here too? Because the term QI studies are usually associated with HHC, because that's the specific term they use in the accreditation standards. But this just isn't about HHC, because all of the accreditation organizations and CMS and your state surveyors, they're going to expect you to do performance improvement projects like a PI study. So why don't we talk about that just for a second?
Right. No matter what you call it, the idea is to take a look at the processes that you have in your surgery center, find out which ones are maybe not meeting the standard of care that you want to provide, and then having a pathway to correct that, or presenting options to make it better.
Right.
And sometimes, and we talk about this in the presentation as well, sometimes you don't.
Right.
Sometimes there's nothing you can do. Sometimes you can be presented with a problem, and you go through all these processes, and you do all this data analysis, and you present all these things, and then you go through and change 15 things, and it doesn't affect it at all.
Yeah.
So that's not a bad study.
Yeah.
It's just maybe one of those things that you cannot change. It's kind of like perception.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's difficult to measure and change a perception. So we talk about that too, is that's not necessarily a bad study. It's just a study where that problem couldn't be solved.
And the accreditation organization is going to want you to probably find something where you could solve it.
Right.
And to your point, I've actually run into people who have done these massive studies and found out that they thought they had a problem, but after they did the research, they didn't.
Yeah.
And again, it's not a bad study. You still solved the problem by saying, I'm all right where I was.
Right.
And I do get frustrated sometimes that some surveyors spend so much time worrying about, making sure that they meet all of those, those things on the checklist.
Yeah.
That they lose sight of what the whole goal is here.
Right. And we talk about that too, that sometimes when you're in that investigatory phase, you can find that the problem really doesn't exist.
Right.
And one of the examples we give is, you start getting satisfaction surveys back that say, hey, my wait time in the waiting room was too long. And so you're like, that's one of those things that is a trigger for a lot of people, because that is part of the point why we built all these surgery centers, is so we could make a more efficient continuum of care. So when they start seeing that, it triggers in something in them, and they're like, okay, I got to fix this. and they start looking at it and they find that no one is spending more than 10 minutes
Right.
in the waiting room.
It's more perception.
It's more perception than anything else. Maybe you need to find a few distractions for them in the waiting room and things like that.
Right.
So yeah, we talk about that as well. Is that's not a bad study either, because you're showing that you have a desire to improve something. You may not be able to, but you have the desire to, and that's the whole idea behind that process.
You bring up something very, very important. We were just talking about how we don't want to see another hand hygiene studies because we've seen so many over the years. I see a lot of studies about wait time, and I don't have that same attitude because I think that definitely is a quality issue. It's something that you can't necessarily make that an ongoing activity. It is something that really falls into the category of something that has to have a lot of research and trial and error to be able to figure out how to solve the problem.
And what we see an awful lot as well is people try to overcomplicate this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Not every study has to have a big statistical analysis and a median and a mean and an average and a standard deviation and all those kind of things.
Yeah.
Not every study has to be run like a clinical trial.
Right.
Sometimes they can be very, very simple, but you're solving a problem, and that's the whole idea.
So we talked about this before we started recording, but of course AAAC has gone through a major change. I mean, a lot of things are changing over there, obviously, but one major change in some of the recent standards updates has been moving from what's been always known as the 10-step QI study to now a six-step study. And that really is a pretty dramatic change. And by the way, as a surveyor, it's a pretty dramatic change for us too, because we're not looking at those studies in the same way we looked at them before. We don't actually even upload any information about the studies or attach them to anything. We just sit down and talk to you about it. I love this new process a lot. So talk a little bit about because we talked about how some people still like the 10s, and I'm all right with that.
Yeah, for those of us that grew up with the 10, that was... And, doing 4 to 6 studies a year. And when I worked for a management company, I was in charge of 15 surgery centers and managing 4 to 6 of those every year for every surgery center.
Yeah.
I knew the 10 by heart.
Right.
And that's just how my brain worked. And then when they presented the 6, I'm like, you know what? This gives you a lot more flexibility.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest take-back.
And it does simplify it quite a bit. It's not quite as rigid as the 10 is. I'm still going to use the 10 when I talk about it. When I do the presentation, I present both of them. And there's pros and cons to both of them. The 6 is much simpler. It gives you a lot more flexibility. To me, as a beginner, it's a little bit easier to follow.
Yeah, agreed.
Because it isn't quite as rigid. And on the 10, it's just what I'm used to.
Right.
And that's just the way my brain looks at when I see a problem. That's the way I analyze that problem, is with that 10-step process.
Yeah, and I do think it's important to note too that AAAC didn't really change what a QI study is.
Right.
At all. It's still the same QI study. It's just really the way you document it and the way you make sure the process is efficient as you go about it.
Yeah, and we try to emphasize that in the presentation, and whenever I talk to people about QI studies, it's not necessarily that you checked all 10 boxes, it's that you told a story.
Right.
If your story has a beginning, a middle, and an end, with some of that 10 or 6-step process sprinkled into it, then you've met the goal of completing that study and having a quality study.
So Daren and I run a surgery center that's not accredited. I'm under CMS certification. I don't have to do any QI studies, right?
Well,
I'm kidding you, of course.
Probably should be, right?
Yeah.
Because we're all in this process together, and we our goal is to provide efficient healthcare, right? And we're here for the patient, for the healthcare of the patient. And if we want to do that, in a way that is providing that quality care, we're not perfect. Nobody is. There's always something to improve on, and there's always some way that you can go down that path, and really should have some sort of process improvement in place.
Yeah, that's the point.
No matter how you want to label it, how you want to arrange it, you are identifying issues, identifying problems, coming up with solutions, and then documenting your success or failure.
And the CMS conditions for coverage actually put it in terms of performance projects or performance improvement projects. Or process improvement, as you talked about.
Yep.
So it is important to remember that you still have to do that. And I think the point that we also want to make too is that even though this is a HHC format, you can use it for any of the accreditation organizations.
Correct. I just use HHC because I'm using their documentation of citations from the year before, and that's what I base my presentation on. But all of them have some sort of requirement for quality studies. Just package it a little bit differently.
Right, and we never really in HHC use the term PDSA, which indeed is something that like Joint Commission encourages you to do. But this still works with the PDSA type concept.
Right.
So Daren, as you finish your speech tomorrow, what is it you want your audience to take away?
So one of the things that I continually try to drive home is keep it simple, and give yourself some variety. Right? Not every study has to be a clinical study. Not every study should be a financial study. Include all the stakeholders as part of that study program. Yeah. So a study can be something as simple as, adjusting the paperwork that you're doing at the front desk to reduce the amount of time that registration takes. It could be something as complicated as complaints of nausea after certain procedures, after getting certain medications, after doing certain things. There's no rules out there that say you have to do one clinical study and you have to do one financial study and you have to do one anesthesia study, and there's nothing out there that says you have to do it that way. There were years where I did 3 studies that were all business office studies, and there were years where it was almost all clinical studies. It all depends on what comes out of the things that I was monitoring. And that I think is the important thing is you just don't grab studies out of thin air.
Right.
You have to use the things that you're monitoring to help drive where those studies come from. Because if you're, once again, doing a hand hygiene study, but all of your documentation says that you don't have any infections and that your surveillance of hand hygiene is all perfect,
why are you doing a study?
Why are we doing a study?
Yeah.
Right? So make sure that all studies have purpose. Make them count. You don't have to do one every month. You're only doing a couple of them a year. So make them count, make sure that you're including all your stakeholders, and make sure that the studies that you're doing have a beginning, a middle, and for God's sakes, have an end.
Daren, as always, it's great talking to you. I'm sure I'll have you back because you got to keep up your trend here.
Oh, so. Absolutely. I can't have Will Prentice pass me up.
That's right, exactly. I'm sure I'll see you in an upcoming meeting, but thank you so much for taking the time.
You bet. Thank you.
Every ASC professional knows that running a surgery center takes knowledge, skill, and a strong support network. That's why we created ASC-Central.com, a place where ASC leaders and staff can learn, connect, and grow together. ASC Central is a comprehensive hub for education and professional development in the ambulatory surgery industry. Our leadership boot camps, on-demand conferences, and membership programs are designed to meet the needs of administrators, nursing leaders, medical directors, business office managers, and anyone committed to excellence in outpatient surgery. Our leadership boot camps are guided, mentored programs that help develop the next generation of ASC leaders. Whether you're new to your role or looking to refine your skills, these boot camps provide the structure and insight you need. And many of them offer AEU credits for CASC certified administrators and IPCH credits for CAIP certified professionals, supporting your ongoing professional certification. ASC Central's on-demand educational library gives you access to in-depth programs on compliance, quality improvement, infection control, credentialing, finance, and more. These full-length virtual conferences are designed to be both informative and engaging, not just check-the-box webinars. Many also include CASC and CAIP continuing education credits. For those who want ongoing learning and connection, ASC Central offers flexible membership programs. The patron membership gives you access to Zoom discussions, key conferences, and a robust resource library. The Premium Access membership adds full access to all boot camps, private consultations, staff training, exclusive content, and ongoing support from top experts in the ASC field. If you want to be part of a community dedicated to raising the bar in ambulatory surgery, visit asc-central.com or email us at info@ascpodcast.com. ASC Central, bringing ASC professionals together to learn, grow, and thrive.
John, you spent time this week with the Arizona Ambulatory Surgery Center Association team. For our Arizona listeners who aren't members yet, why should they join?
Yeah, and I should point out before we get into it that I did try to interview somebody from the association, but because of the timing of things, we weren't able to arrange that. But Sue, that's a great question. You know, Arizona is really the birthplace of the surgery center industry. The Arizona Association of Surgery Centers, it's referred to as ASCA, even though it sounds a lot like the National Association. I like to say maybe you just add a little bit more ASCA, carries the legacy forward. And it's a low-cost, efficient organization focused on producing results for its members with a simple mission: advocate for ASCs across Arizona and promote excellence in surgical care.
So what does a membership actually get you?
Quite a lot for the cost. On education, members attend the annual conference, such as this one, and a member raise, plus member-only events every spring and fall with continuing education credits like CEUs, AEUs, and IPCHs. AEUs, of course, are for the CAST-certified people, and IPCHs for CAPE-certified individuals. There's a members-only resource area with documents and tools for ASC compliance, and they feature a member center and an ASC leader each quarter on their website and in their newsletter. And members can post job openings, which is a real great advantage and a good way to get to the people that they want to target. And just as important, the association is your advocate on the state and federal regulations affecting Arizona ASCs.
Yeah, we always encourage people to join their state associations when they can. So who would be eligible to join?
So active membership is open to any licensed, Medicare certified or accredited freestanding ASC in Arizona. And if you're an individual or non-vendor organization interested in outpatient surgery, there's also an associate membership as well. You can join or renew right at ArizonaASC.org. Just click on Join or Renew, and we'll put a link in the show notes to be able to see the website.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you for joining us on this episode of the ASC Podcast with John Goehle. We hope you found the discussion valuable. And if you did, please share it with your colleagues and be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. We genuinely appreciate your feedback and topic suggestions. Feel free to reach out anytime at comments@ascpodcast.com.
And a heartfelt thank you to our outstanding team whose dedication made this podcast possible. Sound editor Sue Cronkite, executive producer John Goehle, and our research team: Sue Cronkite, Jenna Alvarez, Christina Norman, Judy D'Ambrosio, Mike D'Ambrosio, Zach Kelleritis, Jim Masters, Stuart Rosenberg, Amy Cronkite, Lori Rodericks, Kathy Fode, Donna Macchio, Kelly Frankenfield, and Tony Lyons.
Our theme music is by Media Sushi and Mike Noah, and the ASC Podcast with John Goehle is hosted on Podbean and is available on all major podcast platforms. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.
This episode of the ASC Podcast with John Goehle is sponsored by Surgical Information Systems, RFX Solutions, MedServ, and Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies. Surgical Information Systems provides cutting-edge information solutions for surgery providers. RFX Solutions is your all-in-one healthcare regulatory compliance software. MedServ, which offers the only digital narcotics cabinet specifically designed and priced for surgery centers, helping develop standardized processes and compliance, eliminate paper logs, and prevent drug diversion. And Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies is the nation's leading regulatory and accreditation compliance resource for ambulatory surgery centers. For more information about our sponsors, visit our website at ascpodcast.com. This podcast is an educational and operational tool and is not intended to be a comprehensive resource for all rules, regulations, and standards that an ambulatory surgery center must meet. The advice provided should not be considered as, nor does it constitute legal advice or opinion. When reviewing specific situations involving legal and regulatory issues, attorneys and other professionals should be consulted. This has been a production of Eden Group Development. All rights are reserved. If you're interested in advertising or sponsoring the ASC Podcast with John Goehle, please email us at info@ascpodcast.com. We would love to hear your questions and comments. Please email us at comments@ascpodcast.com.